It's one thing for parents to try to stay on top of all the controversial sexual topics being introduced to their kids these days in schools. But what do you do when your own state government is targeting your kids through text? Unfortunately, that is happening here in Virginia. Welcome to Speak Up Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candy Cushman, and I'm joined today by our president, Victoria Cobb. Victoria, we've got some serious topics to cover today, but before we get into that, I just would like to start with something a little more lighthearted. Can you share with us these what you might call unique parenting episodes that have happened in your household, where as the children of a lawyer and a pro-family leader, maybe your kids have picked up a few lessons along the way that you didn't exactly intend?
Well, there's no question they have a unique discussion in their family and they see things that maybe other kids don't. And so one example was when our school at the lower level decided to remove grades in their school and change it to a check plus check and check minus system. And our kids were all out. First, they wanted to sue the school. We told them that wasn't an option. And then they decided it would be best if they ran a petition and had all the kids sign a petition. The best part was what we called the petition when we helped our kids put this together. The petition was called, "We would give your new grading system an F, but we can only give it a check minus."
That is awesome. I mean, even though you did have to clarify that you can't actually sue the school, isn't there something still encouraging in that they're getting this message that they do have a voice, they have an active role to play? I mean, is it kind of like civics by osmosis, maybe?
They are definitely used to seeing engagement, which we're very excited about. It is a fine line to teach your kids how to respect authority and when it's appropriate to challenge authority and how to do that. But they are knowing by watching their parents that they should be engaged.
Well, I know our listeners would really appreciate hearing some of your thoughts on ways they can encourage their kids. Yes, you have a voice as a Christian. You don't have to be ashamed of your faith. You can speak out. You can influence your world. But how do you show them that in a kind of a fun, winsome way, but also model that respect for authority that you're talking about?
Well, we actually have family meetings and there's a chair and a vice chair and our kids actually have to wait to be called on. And it's just a simple way to show them this is a productive way to have a real conversation about issues and how they can engage. And then we talk about what are appropriate things for them to have input on and what are not.
Well, you know, kids often teach us what we as adults should be thinking about, and there's something to be said for trying to grapple with this truth and grace approach. I mean, it's not just kids that struggle with this and feeling helpless in their environment, and then speaking out in a way that's not showing frustration, but being proactive and showing grace. What do you think we can learn from some of your household discussions with the kids about maybe how adults need to approach things in civics?
Well, there's no question that we see more and more in society, even Christians struggle with. It is more than just truth and being right about an issue. It is about being winsome and trying to draw people towards your views in a way that doesn't isolate them or insult them. And we tend to see that even Christians fall easily into worldly ways of debating these issues and worldly ways of trying to make change. And we just need to look at the Bible as an example of how would Jesus approach an issue. He's truthful, but he's always full with compassion and grace.
In addition to teaching our kids at home, we also want to protect their innocence in the culture, and it seems like the state of Virginia is making that especially hard lately. Can you explain what's happening in particular with this so-called birds and bees text line and these disturbing postcards that are showing up in families' mailboxes?
Well, yes, this has been a shocking development for parents across Virginia as our health department here in Virginia mailed out 96,000 postcards into homes across the state addressing teens directly. And these postcards are cartoon-like characters. They are clearly designed to catch the attention of a child, and they invite them to text to strangers any questions that they might have on things like relationships, sexuality, gender identity, and more. It is beyond the pale of what government should be doing in addressing our kids.
Well, it really is, because we usually hear about these sex ed controversies happening in schools, and it's hard enough for parents to stay on top of what's happening there. But this is really expanding way beyond that and directing promotion right to kids in their homes and online. Help us understand why that's so dangerous and how it really does take disrespect for parents to a whole new level.
Well, it circumvents the parent as point one, but it also is undermining everything we as parents are telling our children with regards to safety, in particular with technology. When they're kids, you tell them don't talk to strangers, but when they get older, they get devices like telephones, and we say don't give out your phone number. Never text a picture that's inappropriate. That's become a real issue among teens. We tell them, even on online gaming, don't get into a chat scenario with a stranger. That is happening more and more, and our messages have been undermined by government coming into our homes with a postcard and saying, yeah, in fact, give us your telephone number and ask us very confidential questions. And they certainly don't even say things like, don't, send us any inappropriate pictures. It's an alarming undermining of the messages that are so important for safety for our own children in every other arena.
That really is just so disturbing, even maddening. I mean, because on top of that, when you think about these national headlines we've been seeing about some of the biggest sex trafficking criminal roundups in history, how can people not see just this glaring irony in that in the government, our state government, encouraging kids to share intimate details like you're talking about with strangers? What is going on with that? I mean, Victoria, how are they justifying this?
Well, I don't want to use the word grooming, but I will say that we think about the reasons we tell our kids not to talk to strangers online is because it paves the path for a sexual predator. And they're justifying it by thinking that kids need to talk to someone besides their parent, which we would say is an unjustifiable reason.
Right. And there are some privacy issues involved with this, right?
No question. We do not want the government having our children's telephone numbers, even if it was safe. And we now know it's going to a third-party provider, an outside organization. We don't know where those phone numbers are going after that.
Mm-hmm. And we don't even know. I don't even think they have a screening mechanism for ensuring these texts aren't from even kids under teenage.
No, there's no way to know who's texting them.
Thanks for tuning in if you're just now joining us for Speak Up Virginia, brought to you by the Family Foundation. For more information about us or the topics we're addressing, you can visit familyfoundation.org. That's familyfoundation.org. Victoria, there's a whole other element to this sex text line controversy, isn't there? That recently escalated this to the national level. It turns out sex text lines are actually being operated in multiple states.
That's right. When we did the research, we found that there were actually 10 states that either have or are currently running sex text lines. And we looked into it because we found out Virginia was taking federal funds, abstinence funds of all things, in order to create this program in the first place. And we wondered who else was doing it.
Yeah, that's been really interesting to look into. And I know that one state even had a sex text line being staffed at one point by Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, Pennsylvania gets the award for maybe something worse than even Virginia, because the only thing worse than having a sex text line where the government is soliciting your kids is knowing that the other end of the answers they're going to get is Planned Parenthood.
Well, in spite of the fact that this is such a sobering topic and very concerning for our kids, one thing that has been encouraging about what's been happening is that it was really one parent in Virginia, I believe, that sounded the alarm on this after she found it in her mailbox. And that really enabled legislators to get involved, and then we came alongside and started the petition and this open letter. But it really just goes to show how one person raising the alarm can have a real impact, because now this is going to help raise awareness in multiple states. So how would you say others could add their voice to this today?
Well, we still have that petition open. We're still asking folks to contact the governor on our website at familyfoundation.org. You can find a banner for the sex text line right at the top. And so that's an effective way to still be a voice. And we know that legislators are going to bring this forward in the future to try to continue to shut this down.
Yeah, so if you want to add your voice, make sure you go to familyfoundation.org and look for that big banner, #StopSexTextLine today. Have we seen any signs, Victoria, that these efforts are having impact so far?
Absolutely. The outrage from parents sparked legislators during the special session to try to cut off any state funding that was added to the federal funding. And we expect that when we come to January, we're going to have legislators take it to the next level in the regular session, where they're going to put forward a bill to say that government can in no way ever solicit our children about these sensitive sexual topics.
Yeah, that debate during our special session was just so interesting, because I noticed that several of the legislators were saying that they really felt like not only were parents cut out, but they were cut out because they didn't even know about it until that debate happened.
That's the amazing thing, to have a program like this never have gone through the General Assembly in the first place. It was simply an objective run through the health department out of the governor's, under the governor's oversight, was appalling to them, in addition to the circumvention of parents.
Well, while we're on the subject of parental rights, what other issues should parents really be aware of happening in our Commonwealth right now that they just might want to be paying attention to?
Well, I always encourage parents to keep a close, watchful eye on what is being taught in public schools, particularly in the area of family life education. That's what other states call sex ed. And the bottom line is it varies county to county, but yet in Virginia, you can opt your child out if what they're being taught is not acceptable. The only problem is you got to find that information. And in some counties, it might be okay with a parent what's being taught. But we've seen examples like Albemarle County where they actually showed inappropriate videos to 14-year-old girls and violated their innocence.
Well, we recently had a victory on this front, right? Can you explain that?
Yes, after 35 years of the Family Foundation encouraging parents to find out what's in their family life education and the struggle of doing that, we finally were able to pass a law that requires counties to put the curriculum online in a parent portal.
All right, well, real quick, where do people go if they want to get this information about what's going on in their county?
We have tried to make it as easy as possible at the Family Foundation. So we've put all of it on our website in a resource. So just go to familyfoundation.org. You'll see a banner and you'll be able to go in and look for your specific county and what content is available for your county.
Well, it's time for our Inconceivable Moments Award. That's where we're featuring examples of the absolute lunacy and craziness that happens when our cultural leaders try to give guidance completely apart from biblical principles. And we're calling this the Liberals' Most Inconceivable Moments Award.
Inconceivable!
So, Victoria, who is this week's nominee for the Inconceivable Moment Award?
Well, going on this theme about the sex text line, we had an inconceivable moment during that debate. And that was when State Senator Adam Ebbin went on his opposition to shutting this down by saying, in fact, that children were actually more at risk with their parents because abuse tends to happen in the home, and literally tried to make the case that an outside stranger was a better scenario for a child than a parent. This is very typical. We see this all the time in our General Assembly where they often have this government mindset where they think we all know better than the parents. And it comes out in all education debates, and it came out in this sex text line. In fact, let's just listen to this in his own words.
And a child is at much greater risk of being abused at home than they are from a credentialed sex educator in another state.
Well, listening to that, it just strikes me that this is just another way of really kind of distracting from the core issue, which is violating parental rights and child privacy. I mean, he's talking about abuse, but this wasn't marketed as an abuse report line. It was marketed specifically as text anonymously, get your questions answered about contraceptives, gender identity, basically everything you don't want your parents to know.
That's right. This is so typical, and the idea that someone would say that somehow state agencies are safer than parents, particularly when we're talking about these sensitive issues, that parents know best when a child is ready to handle these issues, what kind of answers they need. It's the parent that ultimately is the very best person to handle these things as they arise.
Well, it really does seem like this whole mindset that parents can't be trusted, but the government can, a state agency can. It really just gets us right back to this whole trend of Marxism, right?
Well, ultimately, the goal of Marxism is to really separate to the individual, that the family unit is a problem in Marxism, and that you need kids to be subjects of the state. And so constantly we see this effort where the state is trying to step between the parent and the child. And that's what the Family Foundation's been all about. From our infancy, where we were monitoring what they were teaching in family life education back in the late 80s, we've just taken it to a whole new level where now we're not simply doing this in schools, we're actually doing it in their own mailboxes.
And that's why, even though these topics are sobering, we bring them to your attention because we want you to be equipped and informed on how to protect the family in our Commonwealth. All right, well, I just want to remind everyone, after we've done a few of these Inconceivable Awards, we're going to put them in a top 50 list that you can download. So if you want to participate in this whole process, be sure to send in your nominations to speakupradio@familyfoundation.org. That's speakupradio@familyfoundation.org. Thanks for joining us for this week's Speak Up Virginia, brought to you by the Family Foundation. Visit us at familyfoundation.org. That's familyfoundation.org. See you next time. And don't forget, we are stronger when we speak together.